need to open up and get past the fear, have the conversation stage. Okay, back there.
I think people are afraid to hear.
Afraid to hear?
Like they don't want to be social because they're afraid of what they're going to hear, that they might not like it. That it might be negative, but it might mean that they have to do what they do differently or change, or it just is threatening.
When did you have advice about that? How do you do it?
Yeah, well, you just do it. It's not as scary as it seems, and not hardly anything bad will
Anyone else have some advice about turning the big ship?
Yeah, I have some advice, which I've done with clients, which is show them what's being said. They don't have to, they can pretend it doesn't exist, but it does. So whether they're listening or not, a whole lot of other people are.
Okay, all right. Michaela.
It takes a really long time. You have to start pushing, and eventually the ship will start to move. But it may be after you've given up and left.
So you may need to find another job, or you may need to learn how to have a lot of patience.
I would add track whatever data you have, so you have permission in teeny steps, but if you can show success with each teeny step, then you can take another because you've shown the success.
Okay, so incremental, so step away from the fear very incrementally and show the evidence of what you achieved. And one last one before we go to the next topic. Okay. Want to shout it out?
Start with a super small pilot, like a single event in one city, period.
So something that's low risk and can be a proof of concept, a proof of success, that nothing bad will happen.
At least not much bad, right?
A little bit. Okay, so transparency.
So we were a little bit hesitant in the book to use the word transparency, because if you've listened to any politicians over the past year, you hear them use it. Transparency and accountability keep going together. And once it's hit the political circuit, it doesn't feel like a good word anymore. Not like trepidatious, right? Trepidatious? Being nervous about doing something, being scared of it. Showing your way in. Right, Julia? Okay. But please note, I didn't call you trepidatious. I just used the word. Okay.
I'm trepidatious.
Yeah, that's trepidatious, but she's good. And she did spend an hour looking for that picture yesterday. I'm witness to that. I took a nap. Well, I'll tell you, I was napping. She was doing that. It was a good work balance, I thought. So transparency is awfully important, though, because the gravitational pull of social media is from inside institutions to out. That's just the way they work, right? You can't close yourself off to the world. But we figured out that there were actually, when we began to look at it, we created a taxonomy, great word, taxonomy, of 3 different kinds of organizations that we were seeing out there in regards to transparency. So how open are you to the world? How much do you let your people out and outside people in, right? That's what we're talking about with transparency. Now look, there are fortresses. You know what fortresses are. Very high walls, very wide moats, shades drawn, right? They really don't want anybody in, and their job is to keep people out. And wherever there's an us on the inside of a fortress, that means that there's a them out there banging on the gates to get in. Right, we know where the fortresses are in the for-profit world. How long have you spent on the phone waiting to talk to somebody at Verizon, right? Right? There are nonprofit fortresses as well. There's another kind of group, though, called transactionals. These are the people who are primarily interested in turning the turnstiles. Right? They see us simply as customers. You're only valuable when you can pay them or fill a seat, right? A bit too many arts organizations really concerned about tushies and seats. Right? That's how that works. Think about how you pick an airline, right? You pick airline basically on cost, and that's what they think of us as well, right? We're just people out there who are filling slots for them. An enormous amount of energy in transactionals goes into thinking about quantity, right? When we first got online, everybody was talking about traffic, clicks, right? And then friends on Facebook, how many friends do you have, right? These are the quantitative measures that don't necessarily add up to the quality of the relationship. And one of the great things about social media are that you can build and strengthen relationships with one another. So, as you guessed it, we want to talk about organizations that are transparent. Now, transparency is not the same as having being in a glass house. Right? Sometimes people say transparency is like a glass house, but think about National Archives, right? There are things that are sitting behind glass cases, but there's still a barrier between you and whatever that entity. Even if it's see-through, it's still a barrier. So we thought a better analogy would be a sponge, a natural sponge. This is not to be confused with a household object or pregnancy prevention device, right? This is for Kira. How are we saying it for?
Trepidatious.
She's trying to think of that. She said, yes, you really want to put that word up there? I thought it makes me sound really smart to have like the Latin thing up there, right? So it is that thing. So after Beth made me take out the 5-page description of the fortresses of the Hudson Valley. Something made me take it out. I thought it was fascinating. We did put in the issue about sponges. Sponges are really interesting. So listen, they're anchored to the ocean floor. They let in about 20,000 times their weight in water goes pouring through them every day. And they hold the nutrients of what's pouring through. So they're open, they're porous, they're allowing these things to come through, and they're keeping the good parts, right? I thought, well, isn't that kind of a nice analogy of the organizations that we've seen, like, say, a Charity Water or other ones, that are quite willing to open themselves up to the world, let the world take a peek, what Beth would call opening up that kimono a bit, but also adding value to the world out there, right? It's not just about opening up, it's about engaging. That's why that glass building analogy doesn't work well, right? Now we want to be careful because there's people will talk about radical transparency where everything has to be open, all decision making has to be open. All naked all the time. Okay. You can't run organizations that way. It's very, very difficult. We don't know where the median is, but we know that there is one. Every organization is going to have to figure out for themselves how open they want to be. They should err on the side of more open than closed, more sharing than less sharing, but still recognize that there are going to be points where decisions need to be made or delicate issues have to be talked about. So just out of curiosity, do people have a sense here of which one of those three types of transparent organizations that they work with? But let me also say one last thing before you mention it. The good news here, there's really good news. These are not chronic conditions, right? So you can be a fortress, and that's okay, we'll still love you. And you can become something else as well. And we're seeing that. We're seeing that with some government agencies, and we're seeing that with some large institutions. United Ways are beginning to open themselves up as well. So where do folks see themselves on this continuum? Are you thinking you're transactional? What do you think? Anybody have a thought about that?